The ESPN quarterback rankings from executives, scouts, and GMs, as well as the input from ESPN analyst Matt Bowen, are out, and Tua Tagovailoa has been left off the rankings after making the honorable mentions last year. We'll discuss whether it's justified or not, because there's some pretty strong points to make a case that it wasn't. Also, is Mike McDaniel one of the most likely coaches to be replaced after this season? We'll talk about what Yahoo Sports had to say regarding the situation. Plus, we'll discuss Jalen, Ramsey, and more. Do me the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you are new, and as always, let's get into this.
Loses the football. Touchdown! Got it!
You have got to be kidding me.
Jaylen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score!
Field on the near side, man open. Touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa.
Touchdown!
He's going deep. He's going up for the touchdown again. Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We are back here for another one. Appreciate all y'all coming through. If you haven't had a chance, please go check out the video that I dropped yesterday previewing the Miami Dolphins offense. I went over the depth chart as I see it, as well as I gave you prospect profiles, including in-depth scouting reports and all 22 on a few offensive players that we took, being Jonas Savaianaya, Ollie Gordon II, as well as Quinn Ewers. I will be doing the defensive and special teams version this coming weekend, and I'll have prospect profiles of Kenneth Grant as well as Dante Trader. That's the plan right now, all right? So be out on the lookout for that stuff as it drops, all right? Now, a few things here. Number one, go support the sponsor of today's video. That obviously would be Clean the World. I've talked about the great things they do so much on this channel. I mean, you're talking about a company that works with over 8,300 hospitality partners to divert their soap bars and plastic amenities from landfills. And then they recycle the collected soap into new bars. I mean, you look at this, and by doing so, since it was established in 2009, Clean the World has distributed over 80 million bars of soap. I mean, they have diverted 9 million pounds of plastic amenity bottles and over 29 million pounds of total waste from landfills. And they've helped Clean the World Foundation provide an estimated 17 billion hand washes to those in need across the globe. Listen, by recycling soap and other discarded hygiene products, Clean the World saves lives with items that traditionally end up in landfills. You can donate or even volunteer to help Clean the World and their cause at cleantheworld.org. That's cleantheworld.org. So appreciate each and every one of you for supporting them thus far. They do great things over there. All right. So that said, let's get into a few things. All right. Number one, I don't know if you guys saw it today, but I thought it was quite interesting. FS1 canceled a whole bunch of shows. Like, they canceled three shows today. So that means Joy Taylor, Craig Carton, and Emmanuel Acho, they're all out of jobs right now. What's interesting to me is on the Joy Taylor front with that lawsuit and everything that happened, I bet you that she's done for a while here. You know, for sure. Like, you got those lawsuits going on right now. I don't think she's going to be back. I mean, they also got rid of Keyshawn Johnson, Paul Pierce, you know. Basically, apparently Joy Taylor's contract was up and they just decided not to renew it. So, the only things that, like, the facility was, Emmanuel Acho's new show was shut down. The only shows that really survived were The Herd and First Things First. So, looks like there's going to be new shows coming. To be honest with you, I was not a fan of Craig Carton, so Breakfast Ball, to me, what a waste of time that was. So, I mean, big shakeup at FS1. It just really has not been the same over at FS1 since they lost Shannon Sharp and everything's been going down. Oh, buddy. I see Logan in the chat. Bro, you need to go check out what that lawsuit and, what's all in that lawsuit and what it entails, man. It's not good for her. Not good for her by any stretch of the imagination. So, I mean, we'll see what happens with Joy Taylor. All right. Also, a few other things. Teddy Bridgewater has been suspended from Miami Northwestern for providing, quote, impermissible benefits to his players. This included Uber rides, physical therapy, pregame meals, recovery help, field paint, and more. They suspended him for helping these kids out and helping the program out. Teddy Bridgewater paid out of pocket for training camp. That was $14,000. For the Pride sets, which was $9,500. For pregame meals, which was $2,200 a week. For recovery, which was $1,300 a week. For Ubers, which is about $700 a week. And for field paint, which was about $300 a week. He did this as a volunteer, not an employee. And they're punishing him. Absolutely terrible. And apparently, according to Teddy himself, they self-reported. So, I don't know. So, it's apparently he said he's not going anywhere. And, he basically said guys in the administration of Miami Northwestern are the ones who want him gone, or the ones who set him up. And he's basically saying, I'm a volunteer. I don't work for you. You don't pay me. So he's saying, how can you suspend someone who doesn't work for you and isn't employed by you? And Teddy Bridgewater said he's free to go to another school, but he's not going anywhere. So absolutely ridiculous that, Teddy Bridgewater is doing so many things to the program, helping out so many young men's lives, and they're basically trying to, kibosh that. It's it kind of reminds me of a story here. I got a story for you. When I was in the music industry, one of the guys that I represented, he was a producer and a artist, he was a rapper and he was a producer. And he was getting big in Connecticut. He was getting real big there for a while. He was on Hot 97 and everything. Like, we were creating some buzz. He went on tour with, he went on 60 city tours. We were creating a buzz. Anyways, what happened was one of the local schools asked him to be part of their musical after school program. And so he dove right, head first into it, helping the community out, et cetera, et cetera. And basically, he was connecting with the kids, helping out a lot of kids. And one of the parents, searched him and found his music. And because he swore in his music, they basically came back to the program and they wanted him removed from the program. People are just like this. There's people where it doesn't matter how much good you do, whether people are jealous, whether that exposes their own insecurity issues, whatever the case may be, is you're always going to have some Karen, right? Let's be honest, we got a name for these people now. If you're a man, I call you a Darren. You got Darrens and Karens everywhere of all different nationalities, colors, and creed. And what do they want to do? There's always someone trying to dim your light. No matter how brightly you shine, remember this. This is something that was told to me long time ago. Remember, Not everyone is your friend, and even some of your friends, they're going to try and dim your light when you shine. That's just how life works, man. Like, that's just it. And it's absolutely crazy. Like, I remember he's my friend too. He came to my wedding and everything. I remember just how disheartened, he was, and how disappointed he was that all he was trying to do was help out younger kids and impact kids' lives. And you had someone hurt his music, and because he swore a little bit. And it's the same thing with Teddy Bridgewater. Look at the first thing I see when I see Uber rides. What does that tell me? That tells me that people some of these people either had, parents who couldn't pick them up, whether that be they were working to provide for the family or they were just absent, whatever the case may be. And this guy's getting them Uber rides to and from practice. Like, who's going to have a problem with that? Like, let's be real here. That is terrible. It's nuts. It's nuts. Alf comes through and he says, I know a bit about this. Had I personally paid for those things as a booster, I would have been fine. But since he's the head coach, they're putting it under unfair benefits. I mean, again, wasn't he a volunteer? He's not being paid by the school, right? So isn't he kind of like a volunteer head coach? Because that's what I had in high school, right? Like, we had a couple, we had 2 gym teachers. One was the head coach. One was the special teams coordinator. Our offensive coordinator was a volunteer who had been with them for a while since his son was with the team, so he just kept coming back. And our defensive coordinator was the shop teacher. So, I feel like it would be easier, to suspend or punish actual employees. Like, I get his point there, but hey, I don't know how it's working down there. I just think it's crazy, I don't know, so that's kind of wild, man. So, and again, there was no investigation. He said that they were self-reported. So, and if you go look at his, what was it? I think it was a tweet. If you go look at his tweet, he basically says administration is trying to have him shut down. So, I don't know. Kind of wild, man. I feel bad for Teddy, Now, football related stuff. We talked about how apparently Sauce Gardner is going to be made the highest paid corner in the NFL. Well, the Jets and wide receiver Garrett Wilson reached an agreement on a 4-year, $130 million contract extension that includes $90 million guaranteed. And this marks the first time in NFL history that a wide receiver has received an average of over $31 million after playing only 3 seasons. That is wild. I mean, is he one of the best on the team? For sure. I mean, a $32.5 million average. He's the 5th highest for the wide receiver. I'm going to tell you this much. I'd take Waddle over him. Because here's your highest paid receivers in the NFL right now. Jamar Chase at 40.25. Justin Jefferson at 35. CeeDee Lamb at 34. DK at 33. Garrett Wilson at 32.5. And A.J. Brown at 32. Man, this timing is really working out with Tyreek Hill. Because if everything was going well with Tyreek Hill, you know what he'd be asking for right now, don't you? So, thank God he had a little bit of a down season. So, and I agree with what Pro Special said in the chat. He said Jets had to pay a premium for him to stay with his butt fumble organization. You're probably not lying, bro. 110%. I agree with you. I agree with you 110%. They probably had to pay a little bit more of a premium, but wide receivers are divas. He would ask for that money anyways. Let's be real here too on that. So, I mean, hey, look at it this way. We're not there's teams in worse positions with worse records that are paying their guys too. We're not the only ones that haven't won anything and are paying our guys. They can't even make the playoffs and they're paying their guys. Think about that for a second. Could always be worse. How many times I got to say it? Could be worse, Dolphin fans. We could be Jets fans. All right, let's get into what we got to cover today. And we are going to start off with the title of this video. So, executives, coaches, and scouts rank the NFL's top 10 quarterbacks. All right, here we go. Now, they've already done running backs. Remember, Achan missed the top 10, and he made the honorable mentions, and I made the very valid case that he should be above Joe Mixon and Alvin Kamara. Then we had defensive tackles, and Zach Sealer, the 7th most sacks. What was it? I believe 7th most sacks. Let me double check. 7th most sacks of any defensive lineman over the last 2 years, but can't even make the top 10. Right? So, that just goes to show where we are right now with that, unbelievable. So, yeah. Now, after Tua was ranked in the top 100 of the NFL's top 100 at 91, we kind of had a feeling it probably wasn't going to go great here, but yeah, we had a feeling it probably wasn't going to go great here. All right. By the way, on that Zach Sealer point I made there, only Chris Jones and Matabuki, true defensive tackles, have more sacks than Sealer over the last 3 years. He has the 3rd most amongst DTs. If you want to include edges and just go defensive linemen from edges to defensive tackles, he would have the 10th most. And Myles Garrett, Trey Hendrickson, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, Aiden Hutchinson, Montez Sweat, and George Karlaftis, okay, those are 7 edges make up for that top 10. So yeah, to my point, Zach Sealer, these lists lost a ton of credibility to me when Zach Sealer wasn't named, on them, in my opinion. But anyways, so here we go. Let's get into it. So actually, to be honest with you, the top 5 is actually my 5. So Mahomes at 1. I would have Burrow here, but Josh Allen at 2. Burrow at 3. I would have Burrow at 2. Okay, and I would have Allen at 3. Lamar Jackson at 4, which is where I have him. I tweeted out last week, here's my top 5 ratings. And then number 5 is Jaden Daniels. That's exactly how my top 5 would go. Minus, I would flip Allen and Burrow. Okay? So that would be my top 5. Now, where it starts to get spotty, I don't even think Stafford at 6 is spotty. Stafford's good. Are we really doing this with Justin Herbert? Look at Herbert's immense talent keeps him in the top 7. But what are we talking about? Last year he was 6. He dropped 1 spot. That guy continues to do nothing. Right? All right, 21,093 career passing yards are the most in the NFL history through the first 5 seasons. That's great. How many of those came from behind the line of scrimmage? That would be my next question. Okay? Okay, talk about a guy who hasn't done anything. I think you can make the case Jared Goff should go higher than him. Seriously, I'm not even just saying that. 9, Hurts. I don't think Hurts is a top 10 quarterback. Now, if you want to talk about weapons, okay, then that's a different conversation. But from a passing standpoint, come on, man. Did the guy even throw 20 touchdowns last year? I think I would take Baker Mayfield over Jalen Hurts right now. Let me put it this way. If you put Baker Mayfield on the Philadelphia Eagles, are they winning? Probably. Is Jared Goff winning? Probably. Even Justin Herbert's probably putting up better numbers than... I would take Justin Herbert over Hurts, so I do agree with that. Honorable mention, C.J. Stroud. Now, C.J. Stroud last year, remember, on the 2024 list, where was C.J. Stroud? Last year's CJ Stroud was 7. So CJ Stroud dropped to the honorable mention. While Jordan Love, who was in the honorable mentions last year, he remains in the honorable mentions at the exact same spot. All right? Now, what's weird here is they only did 2 honorable mentions. They said also receiving votes: Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Tua Tagovailoa, Bo Nix. All right? So, it's like, first of all, Dak Prescott being ahead of him in terms of votes getting. Let's talk about that for a second. All right? I don't see how that, Dak Prescott played 8 games last year. Tua played 10. Tua was averaging 287 yards per game. Dak's averaging 247. Tua threw for 19 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Dak threw for 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He had an 86 passer rating and Tua had a 101.4 passer rating. Now, what's also interesting too is you talk about the NFL's top 100. Dak Prescott fell from 16 to 79 on this year's list. The guy fell 63 spots. Remember, Tua dropped from 36 to 91. Tua only dropped 55 spots. So Tua actually dropped a smaller amount on the rankings in terms of numbers than Dak did. So that's that. Now, with the actual list itself, the top 5, I agree with 110%. Jalen Hurts, I don't see him as a top 10 quarterback. Right? Like, when, you go back to 2023, when he had the most attempts of his career, he had threw 15 interceptions. Now, he had only 5 interceptions last year, but he had almost 200 fewer passing attempts. So, I think he's kind of living off the Super Bowl hype. I think the argument people try to make about Tua, or if you put any other quarterback in this system, they can do that. Well, we've proven that that's not true. Whereas I think that does hold true to Philadelphia in their situation. Like, I think you win with Herbert there. I think you win with Tua there. I think you win with Baker there. I think you win with Stroud there. Now, Jordan Love isn't a better quarterback than Tua Tagovailoa right now. Let's be real right now. Okay? Listen, I'm a fan of Jordan Love. He's just not a better quarterback than him right now. I mean, what else is there really to say? He hasn't lived up to the expectations since they won that playoff game. Right? It hasn't been good for them. And it hasn't been good for him since they beat Dallas, right? He had that loss to San Francisco where he threw 2 picks in the postseason and the divisional, right? And then since then, last year he was just okay, right? Like, Tua averaged more yards? I think he averaged more yards per game than him too. I don't see that. Now, here's where I think at worst Tua is a top 12 quarterback. So I think, and CJ Stroud, was he good last year? Everyone talked about the sophomore slump he had, and I get it. Tua was hurt 110%. But if we're going by like play, it was pretty bad for CJ Stroud last year. It wasn't impressive by any stretch of the imagination, right? Now, I still do think he's a top 15 quarterback. Let me say this. It wasn't that impressive, but I think he's a better quarterback right now than Jalen Hurts. I'd take CJ Stroud over Jalen Hurts. So, to be honest with you, if you want my opinion, Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts should be out of that top 12 if you include the honorable mentions. I think Tua and Purdy should be in that top 12. See, the problem with these lists it's what have you done for me lately. And like very lately. It's not, okay, how good are you at the position? Yet, then they'll try to use that, how good you are and the talent you have to keep Herbert at 7. But that list is clearly a what have you done for me lately list. And I'll also say this. Tua, you know, this is literally just more fuel to the fire of, hey, go out and show them. Because remember, the one season he stays healthy, he's in the MVP conversation up until week 16. You know, he makes the top 40 on the NFL's top 100. You know, he makes, I think in 2023, heading into last season, Tua made the honorable mentions. He was 14th. Brock Purdy was 11th. Love was 12th. Hurts was 13th, and Tua was 14th. So, you know, and like, look at the disrespect, right? Like, he led the league in passing yards and was in the MVP conversation, and he only made the top 14. He only made 14th. And I say this. Look at this way. I hold the top 100 list a little in higher regard because it's actually players who are playing the game right now and play against or with these guys. Dak and Tua missed time last year, right? Dak played 8 games, Tua played 10. Dak dropped from 16th to 79. Tua dropped from 36 to 91. Again, I go back. Technically, Dak Prescott dropped more spots than Tua did. So, I mean, that just go. And last year, Dak was in the top 10. Dak was number 10 overall on this ESPN ranking. So, anyways, but what that goes to show you is Dak Prescott missing time was more detrimental to his ranking than it was to Tua's ranking. And I do think Tua is the better quarterback right now than Dak Prescott. So, I mean, this is just about, it's time for Tua to stay healthy. And he stays healthy. Listen, if he would have stayed healthy last year and he would have had another good year, he would have made it out of the honorable mentions and probably to the top 10. You know? Like, but he didn't stay healthy last year. He's his own worst enemy. So, I don't know. We'll see. But honestly, where I'm at, I felt Zach Sealer and Devon Achane being left out of their respective position top 10s was more disrespectful than this Tua stuff. We all expect Tua to drop and all this stuff because of the injuries. So this isn't a shock. This isn't a shock at all. You know, you got to stay healthy. I think Achane has a case to be better than, you know, to be placed higher than Kamara and Joe Mixon, who are 9 and 10 on that list of running backs. And Zach Sealer, he's a top 10. There's no doubt about it. Third most sacks over the last 3 years amongst all defensive tackles. 10th most amongst all defensive linemen. This isn't even a question. I think Zach Sealer was much more disrespected, as was Devon Achane. So, you got to think about this. Tua's already one of the most polarizing players in the NFL for some reason, but on top of that, look at the disrespect the Dolphins get in general from the national media. So, it's going to be amplified even more. It is what it is. Tua's a top 12 quarterback in the NFL. He falls somewhere in the 8 to 12 range. This is what I said. And, you know, there's some Sundays where he'll give you a top 3 quarterback performance, and then there's some Sundays where he'll give you a top 20 quarterback performance. Top 25 quarterback performance. So, again, got to stay healthy so you can get to that consistent level. And, again, if you would have stayed healthy last year and had another great year following up your one previous, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. He would have probably made the top 10. Ball's in your court, Tua. Really, that's where it's at. The ball is in your court. Now, some interesting stuff developing regarding, still we're hearing things about Jalen Ramsey and his exit. And the Pittsburgh Steelers defense was good last year, but it faltered down the stretch. In particular, their secondary struggled to stop explosive plays. Therefore, the Steelers were looking to upgrade the back end of their defense, and that led them to trade for Jalen Ramsey. Well, Jalen Ramsey is a talented player. He brings some baggage as well. A recent report outlined how much of a problem he was with the Miami Dolphins. NFL insider Adam Caplan recently broke down what caused the friction between Ramsey and the Dolphins. Quote, he didn't like the way that Fangio was using him 2 years ago because he moved Ramsey around a lot. Quote, Ramsey, if he had his Druthers, as I understand it, and this happened with the Rams too because he played some nickel with the Rams, he'd like to be an outside corner. He's got an ideal length for that position. So Fangio was the Dolphins defensive coordinator in 2023, which was Ramsey's first year in Miami. For most of his career, Ramsey has been a boundary corner, and he's been successful in that role. However, in Miami, the 7-time Pro Bowler moved around more. While he was still primarily an outside corner, Ramsey saw more time operating out of the slot. So, I don't know who's feeding Caplan this information, but that is not what the case was from what we all understand over here, from what we know and what we've heard, both publicly and privately. It was because Ramsey didn't move around enough. That was his issue. I mean, right? You had Xavier Howard taking issue with it because he was asking to travel with certain guys, and Fangio said no. So, I don't know what Caplan's hearing. I don't. I really don't. Because from what we understand, he wanted to move around. And he was mad that he wasn't moving around enough, right? He wanted to return to that star role. So that he was so successful in with the LA Rams. So, I don't know. I don't know who fed Caplan that information, but that man should be double checking his sources. Let me tell you that much. And all the word out of Pittsburgh since Ramsey arrived is that he's going to be moving around, that he's going to be seeing time in the slot as a nickel and up on the boundary. Up on the perch. Because they got Joey Porter Jr. and Darius Slay for the boundary. So, I don't know where they're hearing that. I have no idea. But that totally contradicts what I've heard up until this point about Ramsey's exit. So, yeah. All right. Yahoo Sports. They put out a list about ranking NFL coaches on the hot seat likely to be fired 2025, led by Brian Daboll. Now, they had Daboll at 1. At 2, they had Shane Steichen of the Colts, Brian Callahan at 3, and then at 4, good old Mikey Mike at 4. It says, Tua Tagovailoa helped make the Dolphins offense look like one of the most unstoppable units in the NFL. After 2 seasons, Mike McDaniel had a 20-14 record with consecutive playoff appearances. However, following a disastrous 2024 campaign, he's widely viewed as one of the NFL coaches most likely to be fired. We are a bit skeptical of that outlook. Chris Grier is one of the longest tenured general managers in the NFL, having served in that role for Miami since 2016, and he has only 1 playoff appearance outside of the McDaniel years. Stephen Ross has been loyal to Grier, and it stands to reason that McDaniel has a good amount of supporters as well. After all, McDaniel led the team to consecutive playoff appearances for the first time since 2000-2001. A disastrous season might get him fired, but 8 or more wins likely would be enough for Ross. So I think it's not so much going to be about 8 to 9 wins. I think you got to make, for him to stand a chance of not getting fired, he has to make it back to the playoffs. If he doesn't make it back to the playoffs, it's going to be sayonara. It's going to be peace out. Like, that's all there is to it. Now, 110%, great point about the over loyalty that has been shown by Stephen Ross to certain people. You're not going to hear an argument from me, especially when it comes to Chris Greer. There's been a ton of loyalty. And I think what's frustrating for Dolphin fans is, what have you done to earn that loyalty? Like, really, what have you done to earn that? You've done nothing to earn that loyalty at all. So, yeah. Well, I mean, again, here's my stance on the situation. If this first half goes disastrous, do not wait until the offseason. If you want to get rid of the guy, get rid of him. And then give Anthony Weaver the second half of the season, and let's see what he's got. Because you got to figure out if he's a fit. You can't afford to fire McDaniel at the end of the season, and then Weaver finds a better coaching fit somewhere else, and you lose out on one of the best potential head coaching candidates who is right on your nose. And I mean, as I say it, you know what pops in my head? It's like, wow, that's so Dolphins. They would. They would let that happen. So, and, I know, like, I'm down. Hey, if you move off of McDaniel, yeah, I'm down to see if Tomlin's the guy. If Mike Tomlin gets fired in Pittsburgh, I'm down for Tomlin in Miami. But I want to see if you got to exhaust the resources first. And what I mean by that is you got to see if Weaver's the guy, because I got a feeling he's the perfect blend of McDaniel and Flores we've all been looking for. I got a sneaky suspicion and a sneaky feeling. So that's where I stand with it. Even if you're the apple of your eye is Mike Tomlin, if he gets fired in the next offseason, you got to see what you got in Weaver. You have to. You wouldn't be doing proper due diligence if you didn't. Remember, I started calling for Weaver to replace McDaniel last year if they were going to fire him. So I've been saying this for almost things started going bad in September, October. So I've been saying this for 9 months. So, yeah, listen. And then if Weaver isn't a fit, all right, let's go target Mike Tomlin or whoever's out there. So, let's see if Mike McDaniel can get his ish together, because he's going to have to. If he doesn't, it's going to be sayonara. All right? Now, Jaylen Waddle is a player that I've talked about quite in depth on this channel recently, about how I think him and Tua are going to go out there and they're going to show that Waddle is a bona fide number one, and that life will be okay without Tyreek Hill next year. So, great article here from Marcel Louis-Jacques. He said, Dolphins wide receiver Jaylen Waddle seeks redemption in 2025. There was a point last season where it appeared not only were the Miami Dolphins back from an early season slump, but so was Jaylen Waddle. The wide receiver managed just 310 yards and a touchdown on 28 receptions as the Dolphins sputtered to a 2-6 start. Miami's offense fell victim to inconsistent quarterback play and availability, and that trickled down to the wideouts. But the Dolphins won 4 times in a 5-game stretch starting in Week 10 when the quarterback Tua Tagovailoa was healthy and the offense began to gel. Waddle sparked to life with 390 receiving yards in that span, a pace that over a season would have given him about 1,326 yards, which is similar to what he was doing in 2022, right? Although Waddle ultimately fell short of recording his 4th consecutive 1,000-yard season, Miami believes his play within a healthy offense last season leaves little to no cause for concern in 2025. His production during the offseason program has left Dolphin staffers feeling vindicated in that belief. Quote, I think that he's shown his teammates who he really is, McDaniel said. I think one thing that you can't really minimize is, from a receiver's perspective, having quarterbacks that you don't even practice with in training camp. That's a difficult task. The way he worked on his game during the season that has transferred into what we need to see from him from every player. Waddle finished the 2024 season with 744 yards and 2 touchdowns on 58 receptions, all career lows. He signed a 3-year, $84.75 million extension last offseason, which kicks in for 2026. The extension made him the 10th highest paid receiver in the NFL. With the help of a new wide receivers coach in Robert Prince, Waddle could get back to playing like one. Waddle admitted last season was definitely the year that I didn't want as an individual, and he identified an area of his game that needed immediate improvement. Quote, after watching the film, definitely a lot of hand-eye coordination. I feel like I'm trying to move without the ball too much, he said. And just the simple things, just timing, getting smoother in and out of my routes, pretty much that. The Dolphins hired Prince in January. When the team returned to the practice field, he challenged his receivers to learn an unconventional skill, juggling. Waddle said it's meant to improve hand-eye coordination before playfully boasting about learning the skill in 2 days. Meetings with Prince aren't necessarily fun, but Waddle said they're certainly a challenge. RP, he's just bringing a different dynamic to the room. He's making us work on and off the field. The meeting room, you've got to be on your P's and Q's because he'll ask you something from 2 weeks ago. So RP, he has been great for us. We love him a lot. We love all the challenges he gives us daily and weekly. RP is doing a great job. With Tyreek Hill rehabbing a wrist injury this offseason, Waddle has operated as the team's number one receiver during OTAs and minicamp. Hill can still be heard from the sidelines during team drills, but Dolphin players and coaches have credited Waddle for helping set the tone in practices. Love to hear that. These practices have also proven to be valuable reps for Waddle and Tua, with whom he has played dating to their days at Alabama together. We're continuing to grow our chemistry with one another, Tagovailoa said. For the past 2 years, it's really been me and Reek kind of getting on that same page. But if me and Waddle can get together and continue to make strides throughout these last few days of minicamp, I think it's going to lead to some pretty good things preparing us for training camp. Despite playing with 4 quarterbacks last season, Waddle didn't blame inconsistencies in the position for his down year. From McDaniel's perspective, Waddle's willingness to accept accountability for his own production is indicative of his character and an example of the culture the team is trying to build in 2025. I think therein proves who he is, where he doesn't make it a thing because it wasn't. His game is growing, and he's going to find ways to exceed each and every year as he knows to be the standard now. It's kind of like a badge of honor in that he doesn't see it that way, nor should he. He's a secure player that is working on his craft and the returns on that. He knows with his life wisdom that the returns will be very favorable. Listen, I've been very vocal about all offseason about, when you talk about starters, there's a few depth guys I've been vocal about, but in terms of starters, I've been very vocal that Chop Robinson and Jaylen Waddle are going to have big years this season, and I truly believe that. I truly, truly believe that. Now, obviously, I'm going to do a breakout list, as we get, closer to camp here. I'm probably going to drop it this week or next week before camp starts. But, Waddle and Chop Robinson, to me, in terms of starters, they got the biggest breakout candidates for me. I guess you could say Melifanu too, but I just think, man, I think we're in for a big year for Waddle. You've seen, they mentioned it in the article, at OTAs and minicamp, the chemistry being built up between Tua and Waddle. They're clearly making it a priority to not only get on the same page, but to potentially do some damage this year. And I've said this, we got to get back to the trajectory that offense was on in 2022, right? Where this man had 1,300 yards, 1,700 or so for Tyreek Hill. We need to get back to that. And then now add Achane in the mix, Nick Westbrook-Ikine, add in, of course, Jalen Wright's going to be producing, Malik Washington's going to be producing. We got to get back to that trajectory, man. And we got to get back to it right now. Ryder comes through and says the Waddle disrespect is out of hand. Man, I saw that video going around too of that podcast, and they're choosing all these receivers over Waddle. Listen, just like Tua and the ESPN list, right? If Tua would have stayed healthy last year and built off of 2023, probably makes the top 10. So it's on him. Same thing here. It's now on you, Waddle. It's now on you, Waddle, to make those people put respect on your name. And the kid's got all the talent in the world. Unbelievable talent. So, and I truly believe there is a true bona fide number one receiver in there. We've seen it. So we've seen the flashes of it. We've seen games of it. The guy owns the Jets. He's got he's got majority shares in the New York Jets because he owns them so hard. Let's be real here. Anytime someone says Sauce Gardner deserves to be the highest paid receiver, put on the tape against Jaylen Waddle and say, come again. All right, guys, smash that like button. Subscribe if you are new. Over 250 of you in the room. I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to see you on the next one. Appreciate each and every one of you for coming through. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Go subscribe to Ryder and McConville in the chat. Go check his channel out. Go give him a subscribe, all right? Fins up all day, every day. I will see each and every one of you on the next one. Until then, man, you already know what time it is. Fins up all day, every day.